Hi, everybody, and welcome to the third installment of the CalHighSports.com CIF Bowl Board. We've done this to sort of help people understand what's going on with this year's new state bowl system and how everything's going to work on Selection Sunday. That day is coming up this weekend after all of the various section championship games that are going to be held on Friday and Saturday. I want to tell everybody, first of all, that what's coming next on CalHighSports.com, we're going to have full coverage of games this weekend, especially the Folsom Elk Grove game at Sac State and the Centennial St. John Bosco monster matchup at Angels Stadium coming up on Saturday night. So we'll have that, and then on Sunday, when the actual bowl games are selected, we will have our own board that is going to be submitted to the commissioners in the morning. People can see what our selections are going to be, and then they can kind of compare later in the day when the actual bowl games are made. So visit our site, calhighsports.com, early and often, all weekend long. We will have, most of our coverage will be for free subscribers or free people to watch. It won't be behind our paywall. But we certainly encourage everyone to check out our premium content at all times. We're trying to get this thing still going, and our premium content is available on the website, and it's calhighsports.com. So before any further delays, let's get into this week's third edition of the State Bowl Board. Now, what's going to happen, first of all, is we're going to go over how these games are going to be selected by the commissioners themselves on Sunday. What they're going to do is get together and they're going to decide, first of all, what the open division is going to be. And that, again, as we've said, is going to take about 5 seconds. Assuming De La Salle wins in the North Coast section for the 24th straight year, they would be the top open division team in the North, and the South will be the winner of the Centennial St. John Bosco game. Last year, Centennial won this game, and then they played De La Salle, and De La Salle won. De La Salle won by 3 touchdowns, and it was a great game. It was tied 42-42 until turnovers decided the outcome. So that'll be the open division. Then the commissioners next will get together and decide what teams are going to be in the new open division small schools games. And in the North, Central Catholic of Modesto is still projected to be the number one team, and they have a very tough game against Oakdale that they have to win. They beat them 42-37 previously, and that's going to be for the Sac Joaquin Section Division III title. Then if Oakdale wins, that will mess things up a little bit on the board quite a bit. As you'll see, the other small school team in the North is projected to be the winner of the game between Marin Catholic and Cardinal Newman of Santa Rosa. That's North Coast Section Division 4. The winner of that game is going to be in, I think. And what's going to happen is if Central Catholic gets upset, that will allow the CIF will then have to look further down on the board, and you get to teams like McClymonds and Sonora, which are below the 1250 cutoff line, would be the next teams they would consider. I think McClymonds is a possibility, but Sonora is also, those are pretty close together, and either one of those, I think, would be the next team on the board to play Marin Catholic Cardinal Newman winner. In the South, for the small schools open division, we still have Sierra Canyon of Chatsworth in the number one position. They're playing San Dimas in the Southern Section Mid-Valley Division final. And the second team is Mater Dei Catholic out of San Diego, which is San Diego section, I believe that's Division 4. Now, the wild card in this small schools in the South is San Marino. San Marino is below 1250, and they had a very impressive win over Summit of Fontana last week in the Southern Section Central Division semifinals, and they're playing Charter Oak of Covina. Now, if San Marino wins this game, which is certainly possible, San Marino is 13-0. San Marino then could not only be in the small schools open division, but they could be in the number one slot, even ahead of Sierra Canyon. So San Marino is kind of the wild card here, and they definitely could win that game and be in this small schools with Sierra Canyon. Now, if San Marino loses and Sierra Canyon gets upset, then it gets real messy. You've got Mater Dei Catholic, and you get down to teams like Grace Brethren and Notre Dame, which would be below the cutoff line. So hopefully none of that's going to happen, because if they get down to these teams playing a Central Catholic or Marin Catholic, those are very fine teams, but they're not at the level of Marin Catholic and the Central Catholic. They're just not. So that would be kind of a nightmare scenario if that were to happen. So that once they select the open division, then the commissioners are going to get together and choose each of the games by division. They're going to look at the entire board as a whole. They're not going to pick one game and then move on to another game. They're not going to pick one AA and then, okay, that game's decided, now to move to the next division. They're going to look at the entire board at once and vote on it and make changes to the whole board, because as you've seen in our first two presentations, these teams are interconnected. When there's one upset, it messes up the whole order of teams, the whole lineup. So it's very hard to predict. It's a very fluid situation. So they're going to get together and they're going to start picking the teams by each division. So we'll go over the North here first and look at it a little more closely for the North teams. Folsom and Elk Grove play on Saturday night at Sac State in what's going to be a great game, number 4 versus number 6 in the state. The winner of that game is going to get a home game the next week in the 1AA NorCal Bowl game. Now, who they play is going to be a little bit of trickiness. We have always had Clayton Valley ahead of Bellarmine in our rankings, and that's because Clayton Valley's only loss is by 1 point to Folsom. And if Folsom beats Elk Grove by, say, a touchdown, and Clayton Valley's given them their closest game, the CIF will really have to look closely at having Clayton Valley play Folsom again, because of the nature of their first game. It was very close. So I was there. It was a great game. I think Clayton Valley, in watching them, is better than Bellarmine. Bellarmine has played a tougher schedule. If Bellarmine beats Milpitas in their game in the Central Coast section, then Bellarmine could definitely be in that game opposite the Folsom Elk Grove winner. By Bellarmine moving up, that also makes it possible for the CIF to avoid a rematch, possibly in the 1A game between Bellarmine and St. Francis. We have St. Francis as the next highest ranked team. Now, St. Francis is playing Oak Grove of San Jose in the CCS Division II Open Division playoff game. And Oak Grove has been one of the new teams on the board. They avenged one of their 2 losses by beating Valley Christian last week, and they're playing St. Francis. And Oak Grove's other loss is to St. Francis. So Oak Grove has been the real wild card in the last couple weeks. This team, if they win against St. Francis, they will have avenged both of their losses, and they could come up the board even further. They could easily be ahead of the Rockland Del Oro winner in the Sac Joaquin section. They could even be arguably ahead of Clovis. I'm not sure they would. Clovis has a tough game against Liberty of Bakersfield for the Central Section Division, but Oak Grove could definitely come up if they win against St. Francis. Now, if you look at this NorCal board, you'll see a lot of the teams are underlined. These underlined teams here are already in. They're already in the bowl games, and that's because they're already finished, or they are assured of a spot. Now, Bellarmine and St. Francis, Oak Grove, and Milpitas, and Reardon, or whoever wins between Reardon and Sacred Heart Prep in the Central Coast section, those teams are all in. In the Central Coast section criteria, Milpitas and Oak Grove already know that they're going to a bowl game. They already know because of their wins last week. That's already determined. So we already know the 5 CCS teams. We don't know how they're going to be in order, but we know which 5 they're going to be. Excuse me. So if you look at these teams a little bit closer, you have Bellarmine and St. Francis. Now, the CIF has let us know they're not really crazy about having rematches in these bowl games. So again, having Bellarmine go to the 2nd spot and St. Francis playing Clayton Valley would be an easy fix. There would be 2 less rematches if they did it that way. We have Central Catholic in the next spot. Now, they're in the open division. They'll be off the board when the CIF starts picking the teams. So the next teams in line would be Clovis and Rockland. Clovis representing the Central Section Division 1, Rockland, Sac Joaquin, Division 2. Now, Del Oro and Rockland's a toss-up game. Clovis and Liberty is a toss-up game. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen there. But I think whoever wins those games, that's about where they're going to be on the board, is in this range of teams. The next we have Camp Alindo, which is playing Annalee in the North Coast Section Division 3 final. Annalee is 13-0, so that's no guarantee. This is where we have Oak Grove right now. But if Oak Grove were to win, they would come way up because they will have avenged both of their losses. And then we have Reardon of San Francisco, which is playing Sacred Heart Prep, as mentioned. We had Marin Catholic and Cardinal Newman are playing. And then you get down to some of the 3AA teams. Now, if you look at the NorCal board a little closer here, once you get down past Milpitas, we have Milpitas down below Pleasant Valley of Chico, and right now we have Pleasant Valley, which is done, by the way. They really rattled Shasta in the northern section championship game, 49-7. But I don't know if they would be a little bit higher. They could perhaps play Reardon. We have them playing Reardon right now, but they could perhaps play a Camp Alindo. That could perhaps drop down. The CIF also has let us know that the CCS teams, the 5 CCS teams, because they're going to be pretty closely together, a couple of them could play each other right away. That could be a couple of CCS teams playing each other. Now, when you get further down the board, you get to teams like Milpitas and McClymonds. If you notice, Milpitas is a pretty big school. McClymonds is not. Sonora is not. Hanford is a little bigger. But there's a little bit of a gap when you get behind Milpitas. So when the CIF looks at this board, they're gonna look at a team like Milpitas, who we have as 3A. Who are they going to play? Who would be a good matchup for them? Is McClymonds a good matchup? That's a small school. Sonora's that's a small school. I'm not sure how they're going to go. We have McClymonds ranked higher than Sonora right now. But Sonora does have the experience of playing Oakdale in their first game. That's their loss. They also have the experience of playing Central Catholic last year in the Sac Joaquin section playoffs in a pretty competitive game. So Sonora might actually be a little bit better fit to play Milpitas than McClymonds. So that one could flip. Definitely we could see that one flipping. And then you get further down the board with Hanford is the projected winner in the Central section for Division 3. Sierra Manteca has already won the Sac Joaquin section Division 4 title. They have 5 losses. They're in the same league as Central Catholic and Oakdale and Manteca and some other very good teams. So their record is a bit deceiving. Now, who is Sierra going to play? Right now we have them playing Bradshaw Christian, which beat Hilmar in the Sac Joaquin section Division 6 game, and Bradshaw's only loss on the field is to Vista del Lago. So there's no Bradshaw Christian would not be in some bad situation playing Sierra. That would be a competitive game. Now Sutter is a new team on the board. Sutter defeated Orland in the northern section. So Orland is off. Sutter is on. Sutter has 4 losses. One of those was to Orland. A couple of those were to bigger schools like Palma, but one of them was to Ripon, and the loss to Ripon, I think, dropped Sutter behind team like Bradshaw Christian. That's the way we would have it. Then you look further down the board, you have Berean Christian from the North Coast section, Division 5. Emmanuel is from the Central section, Division 4. Division 4. And then you have Fall River, East Nicholas, Stone Ridge Christian, and Mission are already playing. Stone Ridge Christian and Mission are playing in the play-in game, and we think the winner will probably play. The next lowest team is East Nicholas. Fall River actually has a win over East Nicholas, so that's why we have Fall River higher. Another thing to keep in mind as you look at this whole board is the CIF has let it be known that they're not going to have Clovis, for example, play Ridgeview in the same state division. So you have Clovis, we have as 2AA. Ridgeview, we would in our rankings would have 2AA. So they're gonna fix it so Ridgeview and Clovis are in separate divisions. I think it would be great if Ridgeview and Clovis played each other in a state final. I think that would be awesome for local interest, etc., etc. But in the rules, the way it's written up, they're not going to play, so they're going to honor that what's in the criteria. So an easy fix for this, for example, in the South, would be just to have Ridgeview drop a little bit and play play Heritage in 2A instead of Ridgeview being in 2AA. So that, I think, would be an easy fix for that. And then you look at the South board where we have Emmanuel as 5A. We also have Washington Union as 5A. Well, that couldn't happen. So they would have to fix this board. So Emmanuel would have to maybe move up a little bit, like maybe Emmanuel plays Sutter instead of Berean Christian, and Berean Christian, they just flip spots. So that type of thing could definitely happen. Now we'll switch to the South, because we already did with this 2A. If you notice, of course, Centennial and St. John Bosco at the top. That'll be an awesome game. We're going to go to that. I'm going to go to that. And I'm not sure where I'm going Friday night, but I'm definitely going to go to a game Friday night. So the next game is the Mission Viejo game versus Vista Murrieta. Mission Viejo, clearly, if they win, would be the would get the number one team in the 1AA side of it, and would get a home game the following week. If Vista Murrieta wins, they would be a little lower on the board. Where would they be? I don't know. If Vista Murrieta wins, they will have beaten Mission Viejo, so that'll be a big win, and they might even just stay in that spot, but they might drop behind a Helix or something like that. Helix is the top remaining team in the San Diego section. St. Augustine just defeated Mission Hills, so now you've got the St. Augustine has 2 losses. One was to Loyola and one was to Vista Murrieta. So if St. Augustine wins this game, they're going to pretty much ensure that Narbonne would move up. So Narbonne is in the 3 spot right now in the 1A game, and they're heavily favored to beat Crenshaw in the LA City final. And I think that's probably going to happen. So Narbonne is either going to be in the 2 or the 3 spot, depending on what happens in San Diego. I would still pick Helix over Narbonne at this point. But if St. Augustine wins, then Narbonne would move up for sure. And again, Vista Murrieta wins, then Narbonne might even go even higher. Their 2 losses, one was overtime to Sarah of Gardena. The other loss was to Long Beach Poly. Nothing wrong with that. Now we move on to the next team in line is Camarillo, which plays Thousand Oaks in the Southern Section Northern Division Championship game. That was only 49-45 the last time they played, so there's no guarantee Camarillo is going to win that game. However, I think Camarillo is clearly a higher ranked team than the next group of squads like La Habra, Ridgeview, San Clemente, Calabasas, Heritage, all these teams, because Camarillo has a win over St. Bonaventure. They have a win over a Pac-5 playoff team. None of these others can say that. Camarillo also has a head-to-head win over Calabasas. It was 1 point, but they did beat them. So they're clearly, I think, the next team on the board. Now, if they lose, then, of course, everybody moves up. But if they win, if Camarillo beats Thousand Oaks and is sitting on the board at 14-0, they're going to be in this 4 spot, probably for sure. And, you know, they may have to go play Narbonne. They could play Narbonne, and they could beat them. So, you know, why not? That would be a big challenge for them, but they have been very impressive so far this year. The way they beat St. Bonaventure was very impressive, and if they can do that to St. Bonaventure, they can play Narbonne close for sure, or maybe even beat them. The next teams we have in line are La Habra, which is playing San Clemente in the Southern Division Championship game, and then we have Ridgeview, which is playing Lemoore. Now again, Ridgeview may have to drop a spot or two to avoid being on the same side of Clovis over here. So Ridgeview could drop down, and then Calabasas would be in the next spot opposite La Habra. So if La Habra wins, Ridgeview wins, Calabasas wins, and Heritage wins, Heritage is playing Citrus Hill in the Southern Section Inland Division. Now, if these 4 teams are all in this group, they're all pretty close, really, in any way you look at it. I think Ridgeview would drop down here and play Heritage, and Calabasas would play La Habra. But again, upsets are going to happen. San Clemente's a very tough team. They could beat La Habra for sure. And Palos Verdes, who Calabasas plays in the Western Division, they're the defending champions. They're not exactly going to hand it over to them. So that's not going to be some walkover game either. So then you get further down on the South board. The next team after this group, I think pretty clearly, is Serrano. of Phelan, who's playing Oak Hills in the Eastern Division Championship game. They've already beaten them. It's a rematch game. They should win again, but we'll see. And then you have Rancho Bernardo, which is San Diego section. They've been in the top 5 overall in the San Diego section rankings most of the season. They're not the Division I team, they're the Division II team, but I think they would be the next team. Then you have the Charter Oak San Marino situation, which I mentioned earlier regarding the Open Division. If Charter Oak wins that game, they'll be 13-1, and Charter Oak would be a pretty strong team. They could perhaps be a little bit higher and play a Serrano or something like that. Then you have Los Angeles High, which is LA City, Division II. They're playing Fairfax in their championship game. LA High has been pretty impressive, but I think there's a bit of a gap when you get past Charter Oak, San Marino into LA High. Sierra Canyon, we mentioned them earlier, playing San Dimas. And then Oceanside is kind of a wild card team here. San Diego section Division I. They have 4 losses, but they are Oceanside, and they have a great tradition. They're used to playing big-time high school football. Are the commissioners really going to want Oceanside down here in Division 4 AA, or is Oceanside maybe going to be a few spots higher? I don't think they'd be higher than Rancho Bernardo, but they could be higher than Charter Oak and San Marino and LA High and Sierra Canyon. Definitely Oceanside could be higher on this board come Sunday. And Oceanside is playing their rivals from El Camino in their championship game. The next team we have on the list is La Serna in 4AA, which we have projected to play Oceanside if those two teams were to win. La Serna is playing La Mirada in the Southern Section Southeast Division Championship. La Mirada is a real interesting team. They have 3 losses, but one of them was to mighty St. John Bosco in the first game. It was a total blowout, but that just gives you an indication of how good Bosco may be this year. And Bosco we may be looking at one of the greatest teams we've ever seen in California history. They've got a chance to prove it in the next 2 weeks. But La Mirada can help prove that too with a win over La Serna. I think if La Mirada wins, they would pretty much slide into this area of the board. If you look at the small schools open again, there's where Mater Dei Catholic is. That's kind of where they would fall if they win. They are undefeated on the field. They have a forfeit loss, but they are undefeated on the field, and they've been very good so far this season. We have Bonita Vista of Chula Vista playing Mission Bay. That's in the San Diego Division 3. Mater Dei Catholic is actually Division 4, but they have a couple of comparative wins, so I think they would be higher than Bonita Vista on the board. Canyon of Anaheim is a new team on the board this week. They have 9-4. They also have a forfeit. They knocked out Garden Grove, who I believe was on the board here last time. They've been in and out of that number 1 ranking in that Southern Section, Southern Division all year, and they're projected to win the final against Brea. So that'll be an interesting game, and I don't think they would come up very high on the board. I think they're of the non-small school teams in the Southern Section. They're the lowest one. They'd be behind, clearly would be behind the others on the board. Then if you look at the next group of teams are basically a lot of the smaller school teams in the Southern Section. Grace Brethren is playing Saddleback Valley Christian in a matchup of undefeated teams. That's going to be in the, I believe that's the East Valley Division. And then the Notre Dame Riverside game against Linfield is that is the Northeast Division, and those two have played before. Linfield is only losses to Notre Dame, and we have Grace Brethren higher ranked than Notre Dame, but again, it's been a close call. We think that if they both win, they could play each other in the 5AA bowl game. Now, the next teams on our board gets tricky. You've got Belmont of Los Angeles, one of the biggest schools by enrollment that's going to be on the entire board. Belmont's 13-0. They're playing Hollywood High in the LA City Division III Championship, and Belmont is 13-0 on the field. But if you look at all their scores, you know a lot about LA City football. It's a pretty low brand of football compared to a lot of these others. So this is about where they fall on the board. Maybe they could be a little bit higher because they're such a big school. Maybe the CIF would want to have Belmont maybe play a Canyon of Anaheim instead of Grace Brethren or Notre Dame, kind of avoid some of that. So I could see that happening, and then maybe these others not play each other. So there's definitely some movement, possible movement we see on the board in this area. Then if you go further down, Washington Union just is new on the board this week. They replaced Chavez of Delano, and they're now 9-3. They're playing Chowchilla, and that's the Central Section, Division 5. Or no, it's Division 3. No, Division 4. 2, 4, 6. So 2, 4, 6, 1, 3, 5. So Emmanuel over here is Division 5, not 4. I think I said 4 earlier, but that's 2, 4, 6. So this is Division 4 in the Central Section, Washington Union. And then the next team on the board is, they're playing Chowchilla, by the way, in their section final. Coronado is the only team in the South that is assured of being in the games. The North, we have a bunch of them with underlines. But in the South, it's just Coronado. They went in because they beat Crawford in San Diego Section Division 5. So they're the only team on the board. And then the next team is Kennedy of Delano, which is Central Section Division 6. And they're playing Avenal in their championship game this weekend. The CIF has said several times they want to avoid long travel on their board. However, in this bottom spot, I don't think they can really avoid it because Coronado and the winner of the Kennedy-Avenal game are going to be the two low teams on the South board. I don't think there's really any way around it. You can't have Kennedy play Washington. You can't have Coronado go up and play Belmont. I think these are the two bottom, and that's going to be a long road trip for Coronado, although maybe they would be the host school. But it'll be the Central Section team, Kennedy and Avenal, maybe planning a nice trip to Coronado next weekend. So that's how we look at the board. We're going to have a written down version of our board that we'll be doing on late Saturday night, more like early Sunday morning. It'll be great content on our website. It's going to be a fun weekend. It's one of our busiest weekends of the year. I anticipate we'll be up till 4 or 5 in the morning putting together our own board. We will send it to the commissioners as we have in the past. The last few years, the commissioners picked basically every game that we did. They agreed. And so they'll have the ability to look at our picks and then make their own judgments. And hopefully it will all lead to a new era of California prep football. I think most of us in the media are going to be concentrating on these top divisions, and that's pretty understandable as we get closer to these big monster showdowns at the end of the season. But for all these other schools, it's going to be a great opportunity for them to win a state championship. So thanks for watching another edition of the Cal High Sports Bowl Games, Bowl Board, and everybody have a great weekend. Thank you.